So I've been looking at two different theories of reality on this earth today, and I stress the word theories because until I die, I have no way of knowing if any of this is true or not. But I have my suspicions, and there's lots of evidence available one way or the other way. Anyway, here's the first theory. We're all in some great spiritual lesson factory where we're learning how to be better souls by continually reincarnating into this earthly existence over and over again. And for the alternative viewpoint, I'll share a quote I found that sums up a completely different idea about what's really going on down here. And it goes like this. Robert Morningsky, a truth seeker of the Hopi and Apache tradition, tells the story he learned from his people about a race of beings who knew no limitations, who existed far outside this physical universe. One day, one of them declared his intention to visit Earth and take on a body just for the adventure of it, for the experience. His friends cautioned him, as this universe had a reputation as amnesia-producing, a place of no return. But the entity laughed that off and promised to come back after one lifetime. Centuries passed, and the entity never came home. One of his comrades decided to enter the physical world to go look for his friend. He promised not to get lost in matter and to return with the other individual. More centuries passed, and neither being returned. So another immortal entered physical mass, and he also never came back. In time, many members of these unlimited beings incarnated in human form, and the story goes, none of them has yet gone home. So that's today's topic. Is Earth a spiritual lesson school where souls come down here to learn beautiful spiritual lessons, or is it a soul trap? And if it is a soul trap, what the hell is that all about? And it's not like this soul trap idea is new. An early pre-Christian religion called Gnosticism studied the whole reincarnation trap like 2,000 years ago. And they said some entities called the Archons and a demiurge who figured he was God set this all up. And there's a whole body of literature available on that if you want to take a look. But one of the big questions for me is what would be the benefit for these Archons if this is in fact what is going on? And for the answer to that question, we have to look no further than Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute, who said not only are we on a prison planet, but the Archons use human beings like a kind of livestock because we generate something he called louche energy. And apparently we generate this energy when we're in a low vibratory state like depression or anger or other negative mind state. And this louche energy is apparently food for the Archons, or it has some other value. Which got me wondering if anything like this could really happen on Earth. And lo and behold, I came across this video clip of ants and aphids that kind of illustrates the whole point.
Which is used in the domination of the aphids. Never would you expect such a bizarre and devious thing going on in your garden, but ants use chemicals on their feet to tranquilize and subdue aphids, which allows them to harvest them for food. New research shows the chemicals in ants' footprints will not only tranquilize but inhibit the ability for aphids to regrow their wings. Now, we already knew that ants use the chemicals on their feet to mark their territory, but ants will also mark leaves or a stalk of a plant. And as the aphids land on it, they will become tranquilized, to which the ant will march over and clip their wings, preventing their escape. The aphids, almost acting zombie-like, will get to work sucking juice from the kale, filling their body with honeydew. This honeydew is then excreted by the aphid when the ant strokes the back of the aphid, to which the drop will appear. The honeydew aphids produce will become the primary source of food for the ants, with the odd whole aphid thrown in there as a meal to mix it up.
And it's so amazing that the ants have a way of putting the aphids in a zombie state. I'm not sure if you've noticed how people are behaving lately, but there may be a parallel to that. Anyway, in Monroe's scenario, souls are trapped, mind-wiped, and perpetually reincarnated back to Earth to generate more louche energy. And once I started exploring this line of thought, it's not just Monroe and Gnosticism. There's a whole raft of books, Bibles, scriptures, websites, and YouTube channels featuring astral travelers and psychic mediums and others who all claim to have direct experience with the archons. And I personally ran into what I called the gods of chaos in an ayahuasca ceremony, and those guys pretty much fit the description. I made some videos about the gods of chaos a while back, and you can look those up on this YouTube channel if you like, and see what I had to say about that. So how does ayahuasca fit into all this? And one thing that most people will agree on is that ayahuasca will show you the nature of yourself. But along the way, you may also get an education into the nature of what we call reality on this planet. And what I really believe ayahuasca wants for each and every person that comes to the medicine is that we think for ourselves and figure out things for ourselves, which would be directly opposite to the archons who apparently want to keep us trapped here in a mass psychosis. And if the earth is some great spiritual lesson factory, what's the result of it? I mean, human beings have been on this earth for what, 250,000 years? So where's the progress? If we're all here learning these valuable spiritual lessons about how to become better human beings or better souls, what's the result? Because I'm failing to see the progress myself. And for just one small example of this, I'll tell you about my ancestry, which is half Irish. And at one point in time, the Irish were known as the niggers of Europe. And they were sold into slavery through something called indentured servitude, which simply meant they could never pay off a loan they were given to travel somewhere to get a fresh start. But really, it was just slavery. The debt could never be repaid. And so a lot of my indentured Irish ancestors wound up working right beside black slaves in the Caribbean, for example. So let's fast forward to today, and right now in this mess of a world, most people, to my understanding, are only a few $100s away from insolvency. And the vast majority of the people in the world work for less than $1 a day. So you tell me, what's the difference between an indentured slave or a captured slave from a few hundred years ago, or the majority of the people on this planet today? And actually not even a few hundred years ago. There are slave markets operating in this world right now to this day. And more to the point, what's this great spiritual lesson billions of people are supposed to be learning from being one paycheck away from homeless? And if anyone out there can explain this to me, just leave it in the comments or get a hold of me and just explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Because at this point, I'm not buying into the idea that there's some huge, great spiritual lesson billions of people are supposed to be learning from economic slavery, or on the other hand, mindlessly consuming material goods. And more to the point, what's the difference between my Irish ancestors and most people walking around on Earth today? Where's the progress? Because I'm just not seeing it. Anyway, this brings me to the whole point of this video. And the burning question on my mind is this: how does this continual reincarnation system really affect the people on planet Earth? And I don't care if it's archons or angels in charge. What happens to souls after this continual mind wipe and reincarnation cycle? What would happen to people after a few hundred or maybe even 1,000 reincarnation? And that's the question I was asking to whoever, just putting it out there. And because I asked the question, I got an answer. And this happened at a swap meet the other day in San Diego. Anyway, I wasn't really looking to buy anything myself, so I was just people watching. But I was being shown people in a whole different light. And it's kind of hard to explain. The nearest thing I could compare it to would be the scene from Men in Black, where Kay had his mind wiped by the neuralizer, and then he had it restored by the deneuralizer. And then he walks outside and looks around and realizes he's in a world where there's a bunch of aliens just walking around everywhere.
Damn decent of you.
Don't mention it.
And the lights went on. So Kay got to see aliens, but instead of me seeing aliens, the only thing I could see, or more correctly, the only thing I was shown, was that some of these souls that are inhabiting human bodies on this earth today have gone insane. Like spiritual insanity, or maybe they've been spiritually institutionalized down here on earth. Just too many incarnations, too fast and too furious, and they lost it. And it was as plain as the nose on my face, like right in my face. A lot of people on this planet, and I would hazard to guess the majority of people, have no idea who they are or what they're doing here, or even why they're here on this planet incarnated at this time. And I don't think the swap meet has any particular stranglehold on insane souls, but it was just where I happened to notice it when it hit me. And I was like, what the hell? How did billions of spiritual beings get to be humans who then became economic slaves to a bunch of psychopaths? Is Earth an amnesia trap, like Robert Morning Sky says, or is it just some benevolent little spiritual lesson factory that you're, with your best interests at heart? Anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell without me getting into a 5-hour video. So if anyone out there has any thoughts one way or another, you can get in touch with me at the Ayahuasca Canada website or in the comments or wherever, because this is a big question for me. And I'd like to find out a little more about this before I die. And at my age, that could be pretty much any time. So don't wait too long. I'm Allan Finney, and this is what Ayahuasca told me. So just continuing on with the whole reincarnation trap idea. Principle I'm using is this: as above, so below. In other words, if we're seeing something on the physical plane, there's a corresponding spiritual reality, which if you look around down here, that has some real implications, for me anyway. So let's talk about our human genetics. Our own genetic scientists will tell you that the human genome has been modified, and they know this because scientists modified DNA themselves. And without a doubt, the human genome has been spliced and diced for whatever reason. So we were created by someone for some purpose or other. So why would anyone do that? And it's exactly why we modify DNA ourselves. We're looking for certain characteristics in whatever it is we're creating. And the idea is to create something useful. And how's all that working out down here when you think about it? Anyway, when our DNA was modified, was that done for our benefit or for some other reason? I mean, did some space gods come down here and say, oh, if we just tweak the human DNA, they're going to be way better off? And if you think it was for mankind's benefit, just look around at the world today and tell me how all that is working out. And as near as I can tell, human beings were designed to be a Swiss Army knife. A human being can be turned into just about anything you want. A killer or a saint, a soldier or a farmer, a scholar or a ditch digger. And if you need some psychopathic politicians to run everything down here, Well, there you go. No problem. You can have those too. And for me, one of the big overriding characteristics, from my point of view, certainly, is that humans were designed to follow orders. Human beings submit to authority. As a culture, we don't value critical thinking.
Reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right.
Human beings are shaped and molded for the most part to be followers, and that translates into worker slaves or economic slaves, or however you want to put that. So what possible use would a planet of human slaves have to anyone? And one of the stories out there is that humans were created by space gods to mine gold. And in that theory, some space gods called the Anunnaki needed workers, so they created us. And presumably they arrived here on interdimensional spaceships, so why they wouldn't just build some automated mining machines is beyond me. But anyway, that's a story out there, and lots of people subscribe to that. So it's not like people down here don't understand that we were created to be slaves. So the question for me is, what happened when the space gods left? What did they do with the leftover slaves? You know, when you think about it, we had some value for them, so maybe we might be of value to somebody else. Or maybe the Anunnaki didn't create us to mine gold at all. Maybe that's just the cover story. Maybe they created us to be a planet of slaves to begin with. And then they just sold us to the highest bidder. So maybe that's how we wound up, with the Archons. Or maybe the Archons created us. Who knows? And if you've just stumbled on this video and don't understand who or what the Archons are, you can check out my previous video on this topic, or you can research something called Gnosticism, or the Monroe Institute, and a whole bunch of other web resources out there that explain that whole idea. Anyway, it's pretty easy to see the slave owner mentality down here. The British Empire was built on slave labor, and the United States Empire currently depends on worldwide economic slavery.
Since the beginning of civilization, post-hunter-gatherers, slavery has played a huge role in society, from the building of the pyramids in Egypt to indentured servitude in England. In fact, at the turn of the 19th century, an estimated 3/4 of the world was trapped in bondage against their will, some form of slavery or serfdom. As with the Arab slave trade, the source of slaves was, once again, sub-Saharan Africa. The Europeans essentially tapped into an already developed slave trade and exploited it for their own purposes. Historians estimate that approximately 12 million African slaves entered the Atlantic trade between the 16th and 19th centuries. About 1.5 million died on the ships during transport, and 10.5 million were sold into slavery, mostly in the Caribbean. Another 6 million were sold to Asian slave traders, and yet another 8 million were destined for slave markets on the continent of Africa itself. Although every single government on Earth has officially banned slavery, it still remains a huge problem. There are actually more slaves in the world today than ever before. By some estimates, up to 50 million people live in modern-day bondage. Most of these slaves are in southern Asia, over 20 million, but the rest of Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa, and the Middle East all have high levels of slavery as well.
So if there's slave owners down here on a planetary basis, what's going on up there? And the promoters of reincarnation will tell you that people can somehow get out of this system. If we learn everything we're supposed to know and we get everything right and blah, 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 off we go. But we never seem to get it quite right, do we? We always have to come back and do it all over again for some reason or another. And you'd think that if somebody had our best interests at heart, we could become better human beings, and some of us could graduate and off we go to wherever. But if we are being farmed for our louche energy, what are they going to do? Let people go? You don't leave the gate open for the chickens to get out of the chicken coop, from what I can see. And with our genetic makeup, we're pretty much trapped in this system for a whole bunch of different reasons, too numerous to get into in this little video. And if mankind ever did make it to the point where we could collectively fulfill our human potential, I would think that they're going to wipe us out and start the whole thing over again.
In the Amazon basin, in the lowland forests of Bolivia, archaeologists have discovered new evidence of an ancient civilization.
Nobody expected that kind of society in that region.
Using LiDAR technology, researchers peeled back the dense vegetation to reveal huge structures hidden beneath the trees.
Pyramids 20 meters high. The whole region has been so densely habitated during the pre-Hispanic time. That's incredible to believe.
Now, in an area once thought to be of little interest to archaeologists, hundreds of new sites have been uncovered.
There is new civilization, new culture waiting for us to study them.
So it seems to be our owners are not going to let us escape very easily. That would just be bad for business. Which brings us to the archons, and just like we've been bred for certain characteristics, the archons have certain characteristics themselves. Presumably they have their own genetic code or whatever it is, and their own culture, which includes owning slaves and using them for whatever purpose. That's what they do. And to them, it's probably no different than us raising chickens or pigs or whatever. As above, so below. And if you were looking to keep humans as a bunch of slaves, the system is designed perfectly. An entire planet full of not very smart monkeys who they can mind wipe and then send back down here time after time after time. And if you listen to the Eastern religions, they'll tell you that it's pretty much impossible to escape the great wheel of reincarnation. So you tell me what it is, some benevolent spiritual lesson school or a slave planet. Anyway, all this sounds incredibly bad, but it's not all doom and gloom. So in this whole reincarnation trap idea, if my father was there to greet me after I died, I can't tell you what that would mean to me. It would be just amazing. But I also understand that when people are in highly emotional states, they're pretty easy to manipulate. So which one is it? I get to meet my dead dad, or it's a sales job? The other thing is this. Let's say my grandmother is there to greet me. You know, she died like over 40 years ago. My dad died 48 years ago, Earth time. And what, he's up there just waiting around to see me? Wouldn't they both have been reincarnated by now? This just doesn't make sense to me. The Buddhists will tell you that the period between death and rebirth is 49 days, not like 40 years. Anyway, you're greeted by your dad or grandma or whoever, and it's a big celebration. And there's also this great feeling of unconditional love and acceptance and so on. And then you get hit with the next big emotional event. There's a life review in there somewhere, or a guilt trip, or whatever you want to call that. And for me, it would be like, oh man, if I would have just done this better, or just did that, and it'd be so different, and on and on and on. And nobody would have to say anything, and I could just beat myself up all over again, which used to be one of my favorite hobbies. And then comes the next big thing, the big pitch. At some point, you get coerced or persuaded, or actually flat out told, you have to go back into your dying body, or you have to find a little human baby to inhabit, or, you know, whatever. Which to me begs the question, who is it exactly telling me what to do? And when did this guy get the right to order me around? From what I understand, human beings are supposed to have free will. Isn't that some big thing, free will? So let me relate this to my ayahuasca experiences. What you're being shown or someone you meet over there may or may not be who or what they say they are. So if you're meeting a salesman on Earth to buy some life insurance or something, at least you understand the transaction. But what about over there? Did somebody over there explain to you how all that works, other than that you're going to be given amnesia and you're going to learn some big spiritual lesson? And the other thing I was told, when you meet someone or something over there, you should always ask the question, who are you and what do you want? And if you don't get a satisfactory answer, I'd be very leery about whatever it is, because if somebody can't explain who they are or what they're doing, well, why not? Why can't they tell you? And so for me, things over there aren't always what they seem to be. It's a thought realm. Your thoughts create things. Somebody who knows how to manipulate things over there can show you all kinds of stuff. And it's almost like the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
We've done what you told us. We brought you the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. We melted her.
Ah, very resourceful.
Yes, sir. So we'd like you to keep your promise to us.
I'll have to give the matter a little thought. Go away and come back tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh, but I want to go home now.
You've had plenty of time already.
Yeah. I said come back tomorrow.
If you were really great and powerful, you'd keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz? You ungrateful creatures! Think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now.
Oh.
The great Oz has spoken.
Oh.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
So who is that's really standing in front of you? Your dad or your grandma or the Wizard of Oz? Or you're just so emotionally invested in seeing whoever it is, you just believe it all. So for somebody like me, just wanting to have a father's love from when I was a toddler, and somebody said, oh, I'm your dad, and he looks and talks like my dad and knows all about my life, it'd be pretty easy for me to buy into that whole scenario. In fact, I'd want to buy into that. Who wouldn't? And when you think about all the emotionally damaged people on Earth, who wouldn't just love to have one more moment with their father or mother or daughter or son or their loved ones? Now, that's some powerful motivation, isn't it? And if you're trying to get somebody to do something, just give them an emotional reason. It moves mountains. And speaking of powerful, this whole thing about unconditional love, from my understanding is we already have it inside of us. So what's going on? Are we feeling our own unconditional love, or is God or whoever it is over there giving it out like a party favor or something? So I'm asking myself, is this some big light show being put on for our benefit, some Wizard of Oz song and dance? And if I took a movie projector back in time and showed a light show to some cavemen and I said I was God, I'm pretty sure I'd be the head caveman in no time. And sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And if we're talking about a reincarnation trap that somebody supposedly built, I would say that any sufficiently advanced technology can be made to look like a near-death experience or the whole death experience. And here's the other big problem I have with this. You can't remember your past lives. So I can't remember the last time I died and went through all this. So what story did I get told the last time? And isn't that convenient for whoever is telling you to come back down? That that you can't remember the last time you talked to him, you're not playing with a full deck. It's amnesia. You have no reference point. And while I'm on this, what was the point of learning all those great spiritual lessons if you can't remember them? It just makes absolutely no sense to me. So here's a little thought experiment for you. If I told you that you go into that building over there right now and somebody would wipe your mind and give you amnesia, and then you could go learn some great spiritual lesson you need to learn, would you do it? Would you deliberately forget who you are and what you've already accomplished in this life and try to figure everything out from square one? And I've read stories about people who get amnesia from head injuries or accidents or whatever. And that's no joke. These people suffer. Their families suffer. I don't usually tell ceremony stories in public because people can get the wrong idea about things. But this one is relevant. So I was having a ceremony one day and I was just laying there minding my own business, and I get this idea like I'm supposed to put my hands up, like just put my arms straight up. And all of a sudden, my right arm gets grabbed by something and pulled over into the dark side, for lack of a better, explanation for that. And all this happened really fast, and then I kind of react and start pulling my hand back, and whatever it is, it tells me like telepathically, do you feel this energy? I can give it to you. And it was this kind of pulsing energy that was being transmitted through me. And it was like a very strong energy, and it's like, boom, boom, boom. Very powerful. And this thing wants to give me this energy, whatever the hell that means. And I yanked my arm away from whatever that was, and that was that. And so the way I understand this experience is I was being given an education about how things work over there, about light and dark. And not everything over there has your best interests at heart. But also that the only way that thing could have done anything is if I gave it permission. And this permission idea seems to be a common characteristic for astral travelers and shamans and other spiritual practitioners. They all seem to agree that the only way that somebody over there can do anything to you or with you is you have to give them permission. You have to agree to whatever it is. So if you're being told you have to reincarnate by God or whoever, ultimately it's your decision. We do have freedom of choice. And apparently even religions down here will tell you that. So which one is it? I have to obey, or I have freedom of choice to do what I want to do. So if I wanted this demonic energy or whatever that was, I just had to tell this thing, yeah, sure, give me that energy. And then who knows how that would have played out, or what I would have given up in exchange for this energetic gift. Anyway, there's some crazy shit going on down here, and not all of it is designed for your benefit. So is it possible there's archons harvesting your louche energy while you're down here on Earth, and they operate a reincarnation trap while you have amnesia? From what I've seen over there and some of the different places I've visited, I certainly wouldn't rule it out. In fact, it almost seems pretty mild to me, and I could tell you some stories about that. Anyway, in case you missed it on my last video and you want to see this concept for yourself in a little more depth, check out the Forever Conscious Research channel and a video called Pre-Birth Memories, Matrix, Reincarnation, Soul Trap Commentary. And I'll leave the links in the description. And once again, that's all the time I have for this video. So that's it for me. So take care, God bless, and I'm Allan Finney, and this is what Ayahuasca told me to do. So if this is a slave planet, what's the product? If you're keeping slaves down here, there's got to be a reason. What are they doing with all of us? And I may just have an answer to that question. Just listen to this audio clip. And this is a guy by the name of Jim Sparks talking about his multiple alien abductions on the Coast to Coast radio show. And it's just unbelievable. Just listen to this.
Something that they do, too, which would be sexual energy.
Yeah, I had a feeling that's where you were going.
They can take any kind of human energy and store it, be it hate, be it love, be it euphoria, be it whatever it may be. I suspect that over time, that what they do with a lot of that is barter with it. I think that they can offer those sensations, which can be commercially extremely productive.
And this clip is from a 2-hour interview from like 15 years ago. And Jim wasn't talking about slave planets or louche energy or reincarnation traps or any of that. He was talking about his multiple alien abductions. So let's just listen to that clip one more time.
They can take any kind of human energy and store it, be it hate, be it love, be it euphoria, be it whatever it may be. I think that they can offer those sensations, which can be commercially extremely productive.
And I really don't even know where to begin with that. It just answers so many questions for me. So maybe first thing, let's talk about alien abductions. People get abducted, they get medical exams, or they get milked for sperm, or they get impregnated, or whatever. And then they get their memories wiped, and then they get sent back down here. And some people get hypnosis to unlock their memories, but Jim says he remembers everything about all of his many, many abductions. And he even wrote a book about it, which is still on Amazon from like 2006 or 2008, like the second edition. And what is this book called? The Keepers. So how did that book get that title? Who's keeping who exactly? Anyway, for me, this is where things get very, very interesting. Because what Jim is explaining to me could be human emotional drug trafficking for aliens, or something along those lines. Jim says that aliens can store human emotions. The Gnostics have been saying for 2,000 years that humans were put down here to generate louche energy. For who? The Archons or the Keepers? And now we find out that they can store it, put it in a bottle or a pill or whatever. And then what happens? He says they barter with it. But what if it's a little more valuable than that? There's like 7 or 8 billion people on planet Earth. So just think of the raw human emotional energy being generated day in and day out. So what are they doing with that? Putting it on the alien black market? Everything humans feel, from sexual energy or sexual deviancy, what it feels like to murder somebody, being in a war, rape, drug addiction, or conversely, I guess, childhood joy or innocence or beauty. And the aliens can just take this energy and put it in a bottle. And I say put it in a bottle, but really we have no idea what they're doing with it. What if they're refining it, like taking opium and producing heroin? What would human emotional heroin extract be worth on the intergalactic alien black market? And I'm just speculating here. I can't say one way or another what they do with it, but I do subscribe to the as above, so below theory. And you don't have to look very far to see the rampant drug use down here. Everything from alcohol to ecstasy and everything in between. So for me, the implications are staggering. When you think about this on a planetary basis, 99.99% of the human race, what kind of louche energy are they generating? And then when I think about those organized pedophilia rings, oh my God, how many children get sexually exploited by these sick bastards? What are they doing with that emotional energy? And the thought of that just sickens me. Anyway, speaking of products, what else could they be getting from down here? What about human genetics, which are already collecting? What are they doing with that? Starting another Earth planet? with another bunch of human slaves? What would that be worth on the alien intergalactic black market? In fact, maybe that's how we got here to begin with. And for me, this brings up the whole question of so what exactly is the alien agenda? Or more accurately, the alien agendas? Because there seems to be a whole bunch of different alien species with a stake in the human race. And people that study this will tell you a couple things. Some aliens want to help us, and some don't. And just in the context of this video, I would say that some aliens are okay with owning slaves, and others don't like it at all. And, you know, where have we seen that before? Anyway, let's talk about the friendly ETs, aliens that may want to actually help us out. And a lot of my shaman friends tell me that plant medicines are aliens, or maybe more accurately, that aliens work through certain plants to connect with humans down here. And when I say aliens, I'm really just talking about discarnate consciousness entities, or spiritual entities, or quantum consciousness, or however you want to think about that. And just speaking from a personal experience, the only way I'm still not wrapped up in some human dysfunctional emotional hell is because of plant medicines. I mean, I used to be in hell, but I got better. And I'm just so grateful for that. So how do the plant medicines actually work down here? And from what I can see, entities need a way to work in this dense physical plane. They need to connect to something physical down here in order for that to happen. So the aliens who want to control the human population influence things by working through a political or a banking system down here. And they align themselves energetically with the human psychopaths that control that whole system. Or you know, just people motivated by greed. And they start influencing that whole mindset. And when I talk about people aligning themselves, you don't need some satanic ritual or whatever. You just have to be in basic agreement with whatever that culture is or the thought process are. As above, so below. And if your thoughts are in agreement, that's a vibrational link, for lack of a better term. Even if people are not aware of it, the lines of communications are open. You can make a call. So on the other side of the fence, is the plant medicines. If you're aligning yourself with that energy, you're opening up the lines of communication on that side, which brings us to so let's walk through some human genetic history. In a time long ago, before the aliens altered our human DNA, the hominids running around down here were in a symbiotic relationship with plants. And that developed over hundreds of thousands or millions of years. And this is from mankind's deep past when we were still swinging around in the trees. So the question is, if an alien species wanted to come down here and actually help out humans, how could that be accomplished? One of the ways is, I would think, they could merge their consciousness with some plants that people are going to ingest. And when people do that, they would be ingesting that alien energy or consciousness or vibration or life force or however you want to think about it. And if you're having a hard time with that concept, how did the indigenous cultures explain how they combined two plants from all the plants in the Amazon jungle to make ayahuasca? And they said the plants told them. And for me, that says that somebody out there can communicate with somebody down here, even if we're not in the same room. Messages get through. And if that still sounds far-fetched, tell me what a human being is exactly. It's a non-physical spiritual being, an entity or consciousness, for lack of a better term, merging with a hominid on planet Earth. Our consciousness inhabits this human body, and when the body dies, we go back to our non-physical spiritual life or quantum life or whatever that is. And this has been the whole basis of human religious beliefs for the last couple of thousands of years. So tell me, why can't a life force or whatever it is come down here and reside in some plants? What would be the difference? And the Shipibo culture and many, many indigenous cultures have a tradition of what they call plant allies or master plants. Ayahuasca, peyote, mushrooms, iboga, tobacco, acacia, yopo, canna cherry, bobansana, coffee, one of my personal favorites, and the list goes on and on. And some of the master plants I've been introduced to will open up your heart, or they're used for psychological problems, or, in my case, to retrieve lost pieces of my soul that were scattered all over a hell's half acre. So I just accept this. I'm working with master plants, and I have a bunch of spiritual buddies, for lack of a better explanation. And for whatever reason, they like human beings. They're on our side. But really, for me, the bottom line is I don't even have to know how it works. Call it whatever you want to call it. Put it in whatever framework you want. Aliens or elves or fairies or God or unicorns. I'm just glad I found something that works. And if you're interested in seeing bits and pieces of my healing journey, just check out the videos on this YouTube channel. Anyway, this is all the time I have for this video, and I certainly appreciate you watching this all the way to the end. Thank you very much for that. It means a lot to me. So take care and God bless. And I'm Allan Finney, and this is what ayahuasca does. What do we know for sure at this point about prison planets and reincarnation traps? One of the really big things for me is our genetics. To me, that's the smoking gun. And the message there is that aliens modified our DNA. Who else would have done it or could have done it? In human prehistory, who else could have genetically altered the hominids running around on planet Earth? And the scientists that study this published a study called it the wow signal of the terrestrial genetic code, which relates back to the wow signal from the SETI program, if you're familiar with that. They found patterns in human DNA that they said are irreducible to any natural origin. In other words, modern human beings are a creation of somebody. Human beings are genetically modified organisms. And then we add to that the historical evidence of aliens messing around with early humans. And that comes from ancient biblical writings and writings from Sumeria and the Indian Vedic scriptures, among a whole bunch of others. And scholars have been studying that for decades. And all that clearly documents ET intervention in humanity's past. We were created, and as far as I can see now, we're being managed. And from what I can tell, our alien managers are interested in two things down here. Something called louche energy, or our human emotional energy. And the other thing is human genetics. And once again, there's just so much evidence about that. You'll never get through it all. So if the Earth really is a slave planet, there's got to be a management system. And this is where reincarnation comes into play. And for me, reincarnation is just an alien technology to keep us coming back down to this nonsense time after time after time. And just continuing on with that line of thought, I want to compare the technology used during reincarnation to the technology used for alien abductions, which to me is exactly the same technology in both cases. And the big thing there is so first thing, let's talk about reincarnation. And if you want the Western scientific viewpoint on reincarnation, just check out the University of Virginia. They've published all kinds of studies on reincarnation. Or just take a trip to India, you'll get the idea. We get reincarnated. And most people interpret reincarnation as a spiritual or religious event. But I subscribe to the idea that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. To which I would add in this case, where it's indistinguishable from a religious event. And in my way of thinking, reincarnation is just the fence that keeps the prisoners on the slave planet. It's the prison wall for the human soul. Because you can't have us just wandering off the reservation after we die. Reincarnation is protecting the alien investment in their little slave planet down here. So let's compare reincarnation technology to alien abduction technology, which, from what I can tell, is pretty much the same thing. And not only that, but scientists have actually duplicated a major part of that technology down here on Earth today, which I'll get into in a little bit. But first thing, let's talk about what happens during an abduction. People are transported out of their homes or cars and taken to a UFO where they're medically examined and genetics are harvested or whatever. And then afterwards, and this is a key element, they're mind wiped and sent back down to their home or car or wherever. And during an abduction, our normal rules of physics just don't apply, or physics get suspended somehow. And this is exactly what happens during a reincarnation. After we die, we get transported somewhere with the light. And to me, the light is just a big transport system, or however you want to think of that. It's taking us someplace. And then we get a big song and dance and get convinced to come back down here for whatever reason. But before that happens, here we go again with the mind-wiping technology. And the only difference I can see is that in an abduction, you don't have a choice. You're kidnapped, mind-wiped, and then sent back, all without your consent. In reincarnation, we apparently do have a choice, but for whatever reason, most of us just voluntarily come back down here time after time after time. And to me, that's because of emotional manipulation and just outright lies. They're not giving us all the information about this planet or what they're really up to or even who they are. But in both cases, our normal rules of physics don't apply. In the abduction scenario, aliens can walk through walls. They can transport you out of your home or car without bothering to open the doors. Or they can just beam you up aboard a spaceship. Which is exactly what happens in a reincarnation. We can walk through walls or fly up to the ceiling. And if we try to interact with someone down here, they can't see us. If we try to hug somebody or grab them or whatever, our arms will go right through them. So once again, our normal physics get canceled in both events. And the other major thing is you're taken to an environment where they have control. They're in charge of whatever is going on. And then finally, surprise, surprise, the big mind wipe before we get sent back. And very few people remember their past lives, or it's just a limited memory. And in an abduction, most people just think they're missing some time. Our memories are still there, but we have to do something special to access them, like past life regression or hypnotic regression, to find out what happened. Which to me is So let's talk about this mind-wiping technology. And I hate to say it, but this is exactly like the neuralizer in the Men in Black movies.
This is called a neuralizer. It's a gift from some friends from out of town. This red eye here will isolate the electronic impulses in your brains, more specifically the ones for memory.
What in the hell is going on?
Excellent question. And the answer you're looking for lies right here.
Who are you? Really?
Really? I am just a figment of your imagination. Damn, what a gullible breed. Damn, what a gullible breed.
And I love Kay's line there. What a gullible breed. Or are we just being lied to by the experts? And if you think a neuralizer is just science fiction, we've already created a neuralizer down here. Scientists can now wipe out specific memories from mice. So not only is a mind wipe possible, but we know how to do it. And just like the fictional neuralizer, it works from a light technology, just how Kay described it. And if we're already making neuralizers down here today, what technology does an advanced alien species have? And would we consider that magic or an advanced technology if we weren't aware of it? And just a great big segue here, I've heard that the aliens or the cabal or whatever you want to call them have to warn us about what they're doing. Apparently they have some rule about that. And I think I know where this rule comes from, because if you're going to do something to a spirit or a soul, you have to get them to agree. In other words, they can't do anything to you unless they have your consent. Or maybe at the very least, they have to warn you about whatever it is they're up to. And apparently they do that through movies or other mass media. Anyway, for me, in the abduction scenario, the aliens are using a portable neuralizer, and during a reincarnation, they're using a big neuralizer or something along those lines. And in both cases, we're dealing with technology that creates a great big secret. And I have a hard time believing that that's for my benefit. Secrets are just like lies, and they're never healthy. And that goes for everything from dysfunctional family relationships to dysfunctional governments, the military-industrial complex, and everything in between. All the control mechanisms we see around us. It's all done in the shadows and in the dark and in secret, including spying on every citizen in the world. They don't want us to know what they're up to. I mean, if the ETs are just benign spiritual beings helping us out, what's the problem? Why can't they just tell us what they're doing? Why do I need to be mind wiped after I supposedly learn all their lessons? Is there any school out there where you're supposed to forget what you've learned? That would seem to be counterproductive, wouldn't it? It would be like going to class and learning some basic math one day, but tomorrow you won't remember it, and then we'll move on to algebra. Where's the progress? So just look around at the world today. Where's the human progress? We're not evolving, we're devolving. And I know this sounds bad, but if I've learned anything with ayahuasca, you have to do your shadow work. We have to look in the dark corners and define the problem before we can find a solution. And awareness is the first step. So hopefully we're becoming more aware. And once again, that's my time. And I really do appreciate you watching this video. So God bless. Take care, and until next time, I'm Allan Finney, and this is what ayahuasca told me to tell you. Before I get into today's video, I just want to say on a personal basis, for me, this subject matter is something I've been pursuing my entire life. And to me, this video is the truth of the matter. What's really going on down here on planet Earth? That's just me. You may take the completely opposite viewpoint, and that's fine. I'm just presenting some information here, and I hope you'll find it as interesting as I do. So you can't get very far in this subject area without running into a guy by the name of Robert Monroe. And if you Google him, this is what you'll get. Robert Allan Monroe was a radio broadcasting executive who became known for his research into altered consciousness and for founding the Monroe Institute. His 1971 book, Journeys Out of the Body, is credited with popularizing the term out-of-body experience. So just think about that. Back in the 70s, this guy brings the term out-of-body experience into everyday common use. Monroe was also a businessman, an entrepreneur, an author, and a pilot. And he brought a scientific approach to the out-of-body experience. The Monroe Institute has been operating for over 50 years and has delivered tens of thousands of programs to people around the world. So I thought if I'm talking about this stuff, I should read his books. So I read his first book, which is incredibly interesting. But then I got into Far Journeys, and this is where things just blew my mind. This is where he gets into the idea of louche energy, which answers questions I've had for decades. So let's talk about the louche. And apparently this louche energy is very valuable, but it's also kind of rare in the universe, and it takes a lot to just randomly find it. So somebody had the bright idea to produce it artificially, and for that they needed a garden. And I'm thinking the Garden of Eden myself. And then they created some creatures that could produce the louche. which was a big experimental process apparently. And this is what Monroe says about that. And he's using some shorthand in the book to convey some meanings, which I've tried to explain. Anyway, here's what he said. Someone, somewhere, or both in millions or uncountable, requires, likes, needs, values, collects, drinks, eats, or uses as a drug a substance ident called loosh. This is a rare substance in somewhere, and those who possess loosh find it vital for whatever it is used for. Faced with this question of supply and demand, a universal law of somewhere, someone decided to produce it artificially, so to speak, rather than search for it in its natural form. He decided to build a garden and grow loosh. And as they were experimenting and fine-tuning the garden, they found out another very important thing. Conflict, either physical or mental, causes the best loosh production. And not only that, but the longer the struggle, and then if whatever it is dies in the process, a whole bunch of very good quality loosh gets produced. So if a lion kills a gazelle, or a killer whale kills a seal, or a cat plays with a mouse before it dies, the loosh is better quality. So anyway, after this resounding success at setting up this garden, whoever created it set up a management group to make sure the loosh keeps flowing. And Monroe called these guys the collectors. And as I previously thought, periodically the collectors will engage in mass slaughter to accomplish a couple of things. One of them being a big loosh harvest, and the other thing being a rebalancing of the garden itself, back to square one, as it were. Anyway, after a lot of trial and error, they also created the best loosh producers. And you guessed it, that's us. Human beings were genetically designed to produce a loosh. And the very thing that makes us human is what makes us so good at producing a loosh. It's a byproduct of our emotions. It's the reason for our genetic makeup, which to me just explains so much about human beings. Anyway, this is what Monroe said produces the loosh. The most common have been named love, friendship, family, greed, hate, pain, guilt, disease, pride, ambition, ownership, possession, sacrifice, and on a larger scale, nations, provincialism, wars, famine, religion, machines, freedom, industry, trade, to list a few. Loosh production is higher than ever before. And what they found was the thing that produces the highest quality loosh is human conflict, either physical or mental. So there it is. Humans are kept in a constant state of loosh production by the collectors. And Monroe found out about this when he was doing his out-of-body travels. And he was talking to a being that understood all this. And after finding this out, Monroe went through a period of anger and depression. Because it's probably a great big mind fuck to realize that this is what our planet was set up for. Especially when you get that information when you're out of body. And for me, my mind is officially blown. I don't even know where to start with all this. And I was just reading the book. Can you imagine going out of body into the wherever, and then you're hanging around with somebody that knows something about humanity, and then you find this out? I'm surprised the guy ever went out of body again. But because Monroe wasn't a quitter, and after a big adjustment period, he rationalizes the whole thing. And here's how he explained it. So he starts talking about a dairy cow, and he goes through the whole story of how the farmer lets the cow out to graze in the morning, and then at night the cow walks back into the barn and gives up her milk, which makes her feel better because by that time her udder is sore from having so much milk in it. And at the end of the story, the cow sees the farmer walking away with some white liquid in a pail. She doesn't know what he wants it for or even why he wants it. All she knows is that her udder feels better, and the rest of it she just doesn't care about. So I don't blame Robert Monroe for how he explains it or how he thinks about it. But for me, I'm just not that forgiving myself, which I'll get into in some later videos. Anyway, I'm going to quote from the book again. It took me several months to adjust to the louche rote information. Adjust is a very broad word to describe a complete cycle of shock, rejection, anger, depression, resignation, acceptance. My sequence paralleled remarkably the pattern others have discovered and studies as to human response when notified of approaching death from illness or injury. Something was dying in me. The louche rote information explained everything very neatly. Most important, it explained the purpose, the reason for it all, the why of it. This factor had long eluded me. The louche answer was simple and obvious. The reason was there in very prosaic fashion. We were indeed producing something of value. Louche, if one finally was able to get past the emotional barriers involved, it became hard even then to find holes in the general concept. An explanation of total human behavior and history. And there it is, an explanation of total human behavior and history. And after I got over reading this information, I'm understanding its conclusion, the why of it, why the conflict on Earth, why the violence and destruction, why the negative emotions being constantly generated. What are we down here for? And the other thing is why we're in conflict with ourselves, our own inner anguish. And if you heard this story coming from some lunatic or babbling idiot somewhere, you could just go, what the hell? It's just some story or a deranged fantasy or some lunacy. But as I read Robert's first book and then Far Journeys, I am firmly convinced that this man was entirely lucid. And not only that, the Monroe Institute teaches Monroe's programs with branches worldwide for over 50 years. So I give that some credibility myself. And here's the other thing. Monroe himself wondered if he was off his rocker, especially in the early days. So he had a bunch of psychologists and psychiatrists put him through all kinds of standard tests. And by all accounts, the man was perfectly sane. And I've been out of body on a number of occasions myself, and whatever you may think about Monroe, I have no problems with any of this. I'm pretty sure he was reporting back exactly what he found out. But your mileage, as they say, may vary. I'm certainly not asking you to believe this one way or another. And if nothing else, it's an interesting concept. I like the way it just clarifies my own thinking about the why of things down here, which is really an understatement, which I'll get into as this series progresses. And once again, that's my time, and I'd like to thank you so much for watching this video, and take care, and God bless. And until next time, I'm Allan Finney, and this is what Ayahuasca told me. So there's a lag time between when I produce these videos and when I finish them. So by the time you see this, I've already done more research or got more information, and I'm working on the next one. But I try to keep a logical progression and not skip ahead, and I think that's important. But in this video, I'm just skipping ahead. There's just too much information and not enough video production time. So I hope this will make sense if you've been following along with this series. So as usual, and I can't stress this enough, it's 100% certain that modern man is a genetically modified organism. And because mankind is genetically modified, it has to be by a more intelligent life form, because who else would have the technology? And even the hard science agrees with this, and I'll leave a link to that study in the description. It's called the wow signal of the genetic code. And then there's reincarnation, and I'll point to a whole bunch of work over the last 50 years by the University of Virginia on that subject, and that's backed up by thousands of years of studies in the Eastern traditions. And they'll tell you that it's almost impossible to get off what they call the Great Wheel. And then the other thing for me is ayahuasca. I've done over 130 ayahuasca ceremonies over the last 6 years, and hopefully that's translated into some clarity about what's going on down here and over there. And here's what's going on. Earth isn't some benevolent spiritual lesson system for humanity where we level up like we're playing some cosmic spiritual video game like spiritual Mario Brothers or whatever. We were created by somebody for something, and we were created for their purposes, not ours. We don't matter to whoever created us any more than a flock of chickens or a herd of pigs matters to pig farmers. To them, humans are only good for what they can get out of us. We are a slave planet being managed down here by psychopaths and up there by a race of beings that consider us to be, I don't know, like the rats in the locker, like in the Men in Black movie.
Okay, for real, man, open the damn locker.
Kay, he's back! The light giver! All hail Kay! All hail Kay! Oh, Kay, can you see by the dawn's early?
You are the man who would be king of the train locker.
All hail Jay! All hail Jay!
I brought him over from Grand Central Terminal.
Why you put them rats in my locker, man?
I thought it would put things in perspective for you.
No, Kay, it's actually kind of sad, man. Really, we need to let them out of there. I mean, they need to know the world is bigger than that.
Still a rookie.
Wow.
And I love it when Jay finds out he's a rookie too. So as a race of human beings, that's us. We're kept in the locker and we're rookies. We have no idea what's going on. We are ruled by archons or collectors or the gods of chaos or whatever label you want to put on them. And our whole purpose is to produce loosh energy for the archons, period. End of story. It's a slave planet. That's why modern man was created, and without a doubt, that's how we're being managed today. And all of this might sound really horrible, but it's not all bad news. Knowledge is power. The truth, as they say, shall set you free. Because, as it turns out, there's an escape clause. We're not kept here against our will. We come down here voluntarily, if you can imagine that. We have to agree to be here, and there's no other way for them to get you into a human body other than through your voluntary consent. And so the big pregnant question for me is this: how can they persuade us to come down here time and time again? And the answer to that is it all depends on your belief system. For example, you die and you meet God the Father or Jesus Christ or whoever, and he says you need to get back into a body to learn something, or to help with your children, or your family, or whatever else they can tell you. And they will tell you whatever bullshit story is necessary to get you back. And they know exactly what to say because they can read you like a book. Your entire existence is available to them. All your past lives, your psychological makeup, everything about you. And they're kind of like the army recruiters. They're persistent as fuck, and they don't take no for an answer. And apparently, you and I fell for it again because here we are. And when you step back and look at this reincarnation system, I really can't say enough about it. It is so well designed and so intricately detailed and just so finely tuned to us human beings. They understand us at a level that makes our best psychiatrists look like a bunch of pinheads. And all of this operates off of our belief system. Our beliefs from this lifetime become the method of persuasion for our next reincarnation. And that could be any number of human motivators. It could be religious. I loves me some Jesus and I'll do anything he tells me. Or they'll use something else like guilt or shame or a desire to help people or help your kids or whatever it is. And it's all based on our human emotions, which coincidentally humans are genetically altered to be highly emotional creatures. So just think about that. And just so we don't catch on to all this bullshit lifetime after lifetime, Before we incarnate down here, we get our memories wiped. We're down here like some drunk amnesiacs who have no idea who they are or how they got here. You're just plopped down into this life. So the reincarnation system is brilliant, and it does exactly what it was designed to do. I know a lady who reincarnated back down here as her daughter's child. In other words, she was actually the dead grandmother of who she is in this lifetime. And she came down here to help her daughter, which in this lifetime is going to be her mother. But here's the problem with all that. Her life as a grandmother was incredibly traumatic. So now she's in an incarnation down here with all that unresolved trauma from that past life. And all she has is this idea to help her mother, which she did. But all those unresolved past life generational traumas are entirely messing up her life in the here and now. So how is she supposed to figure that out? Let alone do something about it? And a lot of our problems in this life are generational. And then we go through childhood and get some more bullshit and trauma on top of that. Because everybody down here is a wounded human being in one way or another. And our society and our schools are sick. And kids are energetic sponges and they just suck this up. And none of that energy just goes away. It becomes part of who we are. And it doesn't get resolved from dying or reincarnation or going to heaven or getting forgiven by whoever. It's like the law of conservation. Our energetic signature doesn't move until some force moves it. And I looked for that force for 59 years before I found something that worked for me. True change is an incredibly rare thing for human beings. So let's talk about something specific. Let me give you an example from some ayahuasca ceremonies I did with a friend. When she was younger, she had been thinking of a career in law enforcement or the military. So when we were doing ceremonies, she is wondering about her past lives. So ayahuasca shows her this book of her past lives. And this book has bones and sticking out of it and blood oozing out of the pages. And ayahuasca asks her if she wants to have a look. And she's like, nah, maybe not. Ayahuasca is like, yeah, good idea. And just on a side note, you don't have to look at all those nasty details of those past lives. You don't have to open up your book. What gets healed is your spiritual signature in the here and now. And for me, that's what ayahuasca is for. It's for tuning up your spiritual signature, the core of your being. It's who you are as an entity. Anyway, my friend found out she was a warrior in numerous past lives, and she served some god of war. And this was lifetime after lifetime killing people for this god, like swords and shields and bows and arrow stuff. And then at some point, the god of war just buggered off. He had enough of the game, and off he went to wherever it is gods of war go when they retire. But she had served him lifetime after lifetime. Now what's she going to do? And personally, I have a hunch that this was Mars, who was the Roman god of war. And he either got bored of things or people didn't believe in him anymore, or however that works. Anyway, you tell me how a human being is supposed to unravel all this down here in our tiny little itty-bitty lifetimes, after we've been memory wiped and have absolutely no understanding of our past and who we were and even who we are down here today right now. How are you supposed to do that? So as far as my friend goes, she just thought it would be a good idea to join the military. Because why? I don't know. Because she had done it in multiple lifetimes? People have no idea why they do what they do down here. Because the memories are gone, but the energetic signature remains. And that's what we're working from. That's it. That's all we get. Some vague notion, a feeling, guesswork. It would be like asking a dead rat, what do you want to be in your new life? I don't know. I guess I'll be a rat? That sounds like a good idea. I know how to be a rat. I've done it before. I know the rat world and I love my little rat baby, so yeah, could I be a rat this go around? And maybe that's a bad analogy, but you get the idea. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm Allan Finney, and this is what Ayahuasca told me to tell you, and God bless and take care, and thanks for watching. It really means a lot to me. Today I want to get into something I'm calling biological hypnotism. So let's talk about the human body, our physical existence, because our bodies are the mechanism of control of our spiritual consciousness. In other words, our spiritual consciousness is completely and utterly controlled by the biology of being a human being. And I'm certainly not saying for everyone, but for the vast majority of people on this planet, it certainly is. As a spirit, we get lost in the physicality of this meat puppet. This body becomes our overwhelming priority. That's how strongly we identify with it, and it's a reason we can be persuaded to come back here time after time. And the thing is, if you're going to run a slave planet, you need some way to control the inmates. So if you understand what motivates this biological life form, and if you stuff a spiritual consciousness into this body, and then get that consciousness to believe that it is indeed this biological entity, you can control the spiritual consciousness through its human biological characteristics. And our biology is so utterly simple. And that control certainly applies down here, but it also just seamlessly integrates into the afterlife. And this whole system is just so utterly brilliant. But all this wouldn't be possible without the one key element that makes the whole thing work. And that's the mind wipe or the memory wipe or whatever you want to call it. In order for this to work, you can't have our spiritual consciousness understanding that it really isn't a human body. Because if we had full memory of who we are, we would understand at a fundamental level that we're not really human beings. And humans do pay lip service to that idea. There's a saying out there. We're not humans having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But if humanity truly understood that little phrase, it would be a different world altogether. We don't. As it is, you have no memory of having existed before, and you walk and you talk like a human being, and you quite reasonably conclude that you must be something called a human being. And there's not a lot of evidence to the contrary. So when we're talking about Earth as a prison planet, our physicality is the prison. And while our bodies are the physical prison, they're also our psychological prison, which in turn hypnotizes or conditions the spirit into believing it's a physical entity. Our spirit thinks it's a human being. All of the control of whoever genetically altered us is found in our human biology. Understand what drives a human being, and you understand how to control the spiritual consciousness that's trapped inside the body. And the proof of all this is that it works time after time, lifetime after lifetime. We get conditioned down here on the earthly plane, which then extends into our spiritual existence up there. We think we're human beings, or that we have to do something about humanity, or our friends or family or whatever. That becomes a priority. So let's talk about a human being's basic drives. And one of the primary human drives is self-preservation. So if you manipulate anything that concerns itself with self-preservation, that's a powerful mind control mechanism. And for modern man, self-preservation has been translated into this huge fear of death. The fear of our own death, or the fear of a loved one's death, or just the idea of death. Our society is pathologically obsessed with it. But if we truly understood that we're a spiritual consciousness, we would have no fear of death, and the control mechanism would vanish just like that. And then there's our other base or biological drives, including the desire for love or the desire to bond with someone. This can be our love for our mate or our love for our children or family. And this is a very strong drive where people are willing to sacrifice their own life. And it's no different than a female grizzly bear risking her life in defense of her cubs against a much larger male. That's how strong this is. There's also other things like the drive for pleasure, sexual experiences, and other pleasurable activities. And of course, all the negative human emotions that can also become control points, like greed, envy, jealousy, shame, recrimination, anger or resentment, or tribalism in all its many forms, all of which allow humans to be easily manipulated if you know what you're doing. And these drives are so powerful, you can actually turn any garden variety human being into a monster. Just look up the Milgram shock experiment, where Stanley Milgram famously found out that people will give what they think is a fatal shock to a stranger because someone in authority told them to. Or the Stanford prison experiment that turned college students into brutal prison guards. And that particular experiment has played out in all kinds of real-life situations that we're seeing today. Or the Ash conformity experiment. And all of these deal with a branch of psychology called behavioral psychology. And on a large scale or a societal scale, something called social engineering. And over our lifetimes, these instinctual and emotional drives make a huge imprint on our spiritual consciousness. We get caught up in the drama of being a human being, and our biological imperatives turn into spiritual brainwashing. I have to get back down here. My babies need to be protected. The enemy needs to be killed. I want to have an intimate relationship. Our spirits don't remember who they are as spiritual beings. And dying and going to the non-physical world doesn't mean you just automatically figure all this out. There's no great wisdom or suddenly we understand this great charade. In fact, far from it. We are who we are and we think we know what we know. And if we're convinced that we're here in some great spiritual lesson school, then we buy into the whole idea. And when you die, that's exactly what it's presented as. So we just buy into it. And if whoever is in a position of authority says we have to get our mind wiped to get back down here and get the job done, then I guess we have to get our minds wiped, right? So we're like, okay, give me the mind wipe and I'll see if I can get it right this time. And off we go on another adventure on slave planet Earth. Let me give you an example. Let's say you woke up in a hospital bed this afternoon and there's this strange woman or man or whoever that says, "Oh, darling, you're finally awake, thank God," and they throw their arms around you and start crying. But you don't know who you are or who this person is or how you got into this hospital bed. And the only people you can rely on to tell you who you are these people who say they know you. And maybe they have photo albums or whatever with your pictures in it, but you have no memories of that. So what are you going to think? You must be whoever they say you are. Well, it's no different than this reincarnation system. If I died right now and went over to that side and somebody tells me, "Oh, what a great job I did, but I still have work to do down here and my kids need me and my wife loves me and blah, 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 blah," and I'm still working on my human thoughts and desires and instincts, chances are I'm going to wind up back down here. And then it's like, just step into the reincarnation machine, and it is a machine. But before we send you down, and just for your own protection or for national security or whatever, you have to go through this mind wipe technology first. Just a little technical detail. And boom, here you are in another amnesiac lifetime of what the fuck am I doing back down here? And whoever it is presenting themselves as our friends or spiritual advisors or whatever, but we're trusting beings that certainly don't have our best interests at heart. And if you think they do, just look at the state of this world. Does this look like somebody gives a flying fuck about anything down here? Anyway, I have to tell you this story about the mushroom god because it came up when I was writing this script. And I don't usually tell ceremony stories because people get weird ideas. Anyway, about a year ago, I was getting all these people telling me, Alan, we have to do some mushrooms sometimes. And have you ever done mushrooms? And we're all going to have to take some mushrooms and mushroom this and that and yada, yada. And then a guy I know just sends me an ounce of mushrooms out of the blue. So I figure, well, maybe I should give him a go. And I have no idea what to expect. The last time I had mushrooms was like 45 years ago when I was an idiot. So I took some. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to this, I don't know what to call it, a mushroom god, a great big mushroom god. And he seemed pretty pissy. And the impression I get is like, what are you doing here? So the attitude is like, do you even know what you want to know? So I asked him about the nature of our existence here on planet Earth. Like, what's up with human existence? And he kind of shifts everything visually for me, I guess just to show me how easy it is for someone like him to do that. And he says this, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. The only reason you see things how you see things down here is that you've been hypnotized. And I'm like, hypnotized by who? For what purpose? But that's all I got out of him, hypnotized. And as I was writing this script, I finally realized what the mushroom god was talking about. Human beings are hypnotized. And how that works is through, let's call it, biological hypnotism. Because if somebody's going to hypnotize you, there has to be a way to do it, like a swinging watch or something. There's got to be a mechanism. So our physical body is the mechanism. If you want to turn a spiritual consciousness into a slave, put them in a physical body. And for about 7 or 8 billion people, that's exactly how easy it is. It's a slave planet. Anyway, that's my time, and I'm Allan Finney, and this is what Ayahuasca told me to tell you. And God bless and take care, and thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to me.